What's up guys, Asian here again with another build video. This time we're going to be going over the Stamina Templar DPS for Clockwork City. So, like our other build videos, we'll be going over gear, as well as CP distribution and our skill bars setup. Do keep in mind that this is only one of many different gear combinations that you can have as a Stamina Templar, as a Stamina Toon in general. This is because Stamina Toons, Stamina DPS have access to a lot more debuff sets compared to Magicka DPS, and so in a raid group you might have to wear different sets depending on whether you are assigned to wear a debuff set or if you're allowed to be more selfish and wear something like Twice Fanged Snake. So do keep that in mind. We're going to go over our gear first. Two-piece Veladrets. You can use Selines. The BPS difference is pretty small there. I prefer using Veladrets though. Our first 5-piece set is going to be a Vicious Ophidian, all Divines obviously. And our second set piece is going to be a Sunderflame. This is a debuff set that you can use. Now you can, depending on which pieces you get first, ideally you will have Vicious Ophidian as your jewelry, just because you can't find gold Sunderflame, and so you want to have extra. You want your debuff set to be in full gold. However, this is on the PTS. You don't get gold jewelry on the PTS, unfortunately. So we're gonna stick with purple Sunderflame. But do keep this in mind though, that perhaps using gold Vicious Ophidian is the preferred way to go. So you can have 3 gold Vicious Ophidian jewelry, and the rest of your body is going to be Sunderflame, just so you can get a little bit more extra penetration out from that 5-piece bonus from Sunderflame. Other sets you can use instead of Sunderflame, depending on what your group wants, is things like Night Mother's Gaze, Morag Tong, or I've even seen some groups say DPS use Alkash, or if you want to be more selfish, you can use something like Spriggans or Two-Fanged Snake. The main stay here is going to be Vicious Ophidian. For our weapons, 2 daggers of the Vicious Ophidian. We want to keep Vicious Ophidian as our on our weapons because we want to keep our Sunderflame, our Night Mother's Gaze, or basically our debuff penetration set to be active at all times, so even when we're on our back bar. So that's why we have Vicious Ophidian as our weapons. Now for Sunderflame, because the debuff lasts for 8 seconds, you can get away with Sunderflame weapons if you want to. Kind of the same deal with Night Mother's Gaze. The debuff lasts for 6 seconds, so you can get away with using dual wield Night Mother's weapons instead of Vicious Ophidian daggers, but that's completely up to you. We're going to have Infuse the Poison enchant on the main bar. You can go with Nirnhoned or Sharpened, and I have Precise with the weapon damage enchant on our offhand. You can go Nirnhoned or Sharpened again on the offhand, but I found the Infused pulls a little bit higher compared to Nirnhoned, and Sharpened actually pulls a little bit higher on the offhand, but I like using Precise as well to get a little bit of extra crit bonus, because Templars do have some extra crit damage put into their passives. For our back bar, we're using the Maelstrom Bow, Nirnhoned, or you can go with Sharpened instead, because it's now a set effect instead of an enchant. Infused is no longer best in slot for Maelstrom Bows. Notice we're going to be using poisons. This is double Ravage health poisons. I'll show you how to make those in just a second after we go over our skills and our CPs. For our skills, I am a Dark Elf, so do keep that in mind when we finish our parts and everything. The ideal class is actually going to be Red Guards, but you can go with Dark Elf or Khajiit or even Wood Elves if you so choose. So these are going to be our bars for this build: Biting Jabs, Blood Craze, Power of the Light, Deadly Cloak, and Repentance. Our ultimate here is going to be Dawnbreaker, Flawless Dawnbreaker, up there for the weapon damage. This is not going to be the ultimate that we use as our damage ultimate. For our back bar, we have Luminous Shards. You can go with the other morph, Blazing Spear, if you want. Poison Injection, Endless Hail, Cures a Caltrops, Rearming Trap, and Ballista. This is going to be the ultimate that we actually do use to deal damage. Now, the inclusion of Luminous Shards might be a little bit of a head scratcher for some of you guys, so here's why we have Luminous Shards here. if we take a look at the passive ability Piercing Spear, increases our crit damage done and our damage against blocking enemies by 10% whenever we have an Adric Spear ability slotted. And that last part is very important. You need to have an Adric Spear ability slotted. So the other option that some Templars use is we use Crescent Sweeps as our ultimate back here to maintain to keep that Piercing Spear passive, and then instead of Luminous Shards, we use something like Vigor to improve our survivability, and instead we keep the Dawnbreaker on the front bar here, and we use Crescent Sweep as our main damage ultimate. That is a viable option. You won't see that big of a drop in DPS. However, the higher DPS is going to be coming from Ballista with Luminous Shards instead of Vigor. But do keep in mind you do lose out on Vigor, so it's a bit of a trade-off there. Going to go into our CP points distribution. You have 230 points for green, blue, and red, 230 in each of those three colors. 75 in Mooncalf, 75 in Tenacity, and the other 80 points you can put into these next three nodes however you see fit. I have 26 in Warlord, 26 in Tumbling, 28 in Shadow Ward. This helps maintain our stamina during instances where we have to block cast or we have to use Break Free. For our blue CPs, 44 in Master at Arms, 52 in Thaumaturge, 52 in Precise Strikes, and 56 in Mighty, with 26 points into Piercing. Now a little bit of a discussion about how many points should I put into Piercing. That all depends on how many debuff sets you are running in your group. For instance, if the only debuff sets you really have are going to be Alkosh on your tank as well as Power of the Light from your healer, then you're going to want to put more points into Piercing to help make up for that loss in Penetration. If you have other stamina DPS in the group, and you have Night Mother's Gaze, Thunder Flame, you have Alkosh from your tanks, you have a Stamplar, or I guess in this case you are the Stamplar, so you do get Power of the Light uptime, then you might want to put less points into Piercing and put the points elsewhere to help maximize the amount of damage that you can do. This particular setup is optimized for assuming you get Night Mother's Gaze as well as Infused Crusher, but you don't have Alkosh. So do keep that in mind when you're distributing your CP points into Piercing. If you do need to take points out of other nodes and put them into Piercing, my recommendation would be to start with Precise Strikes, then Thaumaturge, and Master at Arms. This is because you won't see as much of a drop in DPS if you take out Precise Strikes first, since we are no longer using Thief, so our crit chance is not as high as it used to be in previous patches. Even though we get some extra crit damage involved, the 1% difference isn't going to be that big of a deal. 1 or 2% difference isn't going to be that big of a deal. Now for the next couple of CP point distributions, I actually have to change them here. I found something a little bit more optimal. This is a one-size-fits-most distribution. You can play around with where you put points in these nodes depending on the content you're running. For example, if you know you're going to have more magic damage, you might want to put points into Elemental Defender and take them out of Hardy. 61 to Ironclad, 1 into Medium Armor Focus, 56 in these next three nodes, Thick-Skinned, Hardy, and Elemental Defender. Again, you can put and take out and put in wherever you think is necessary based on the content you are running. For food, we will be running max health, max stamina food, here braised rabbits with spring vegetables. We will be using Essence of Spell Power, Major Brutality, Major Savagery, and Major Endurance. As long as you have your medicinal use passive up to max, which requires you level alchemy up to 50, you will always have these buffs up all the time, as long as you're using your potions as soon as they are ready to be used. You can make these potions. So this is the double Ravage health poisons that we're using on our bow bar. It's Blessed Thistle, Fleshfly Larva, and Nightshade. For our Essence of Spell Weapon Power, it's going to be Blessed Thistle, Dragon Thorn, and Wormwood. So that's how you make those potions and poisons. So now we're going to go ahead and start our 3 million dummy parse. One thing to keep in mind, we don't have a source of major fracture on a Stamplar. We do have a source of minor fracture through Power of the Light, but we don't have a source of the major debuff. So do keep that in mind when we compare parses who, for example, a stamina DK, where they have a native source of major fracture through one of their class abilities. So our parse is going to be lower than that of a stamina Nightblade or a stamina DK because we don't have a native source of major fracture. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and start the parse in 3, 2, and 1. There we go, a 33.5k parse on a stamina Templar. Do keep in mind again that we don't have a native source of major fracture, so our parse is going to be lower when you compare it to a stamina Nightblade or a stamina DK. Quick look at our combat metrics parse. Thunderflame uptime is going to be a little bit lower just because we don't start off with heavy attacks on our build, but in an actual trial scenario you're probably going to have 100% uptime on Thunderflame, so do keep that in mind there. As you can see here, Endless Hail is going to be our primary source of damage here, and if we try to find our poisons here make up combined 1180 plus 600, so about 1800 DPS, which is not insignificant, so that's kind of why we're going with the poisons instead of an enchant instead. So Power of the Light uptime is going to be very important as a Templar, especially in a group scenario, because you are the only ones who can reliably maintain Power of the Light. Healers can do Power of the Light, but it's very difficult for them to maintain a 100% uptime. So you can see here we managed to get 84% uptime on Power of the Light, which is not 100%, however that is very, very good, and healers, if they are running Power of the Light, it's more than enough to get 100% uptime on the Minor Fracture and Minor Breach debuff. However, even if the healers aren't running it, 84% is still very respectable in terms of Power of the Light uptime. So that's it for this video. Hope this guide helped, and I'll see you guys in the next dungeon.